And I'd entertain a motion for the roll call.
Just right here.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and with that, I will call the roll for you all. We'll go in the order that it was on your agenda, just so you can ease into the meeting and figure out when you want to mute and unmute your microphones. So we'll start with Commissioner Dahleen.
Here.
Commissioner Doskich.
Here.
Commissioner Good.
Here.
Commissioner Miller.
Here.
Commissioner Nelson.
Here.
Commissioner Struthers.
Here.
Commissioner Willett. Commissioner Lalas. Commissioner Osborne.
Here.
Commissioner McCauley.
Here.
And Commissioner Itis.
Here.
And with that, Commissioner, if I could just make a couple of quick announcements for this evening's meeting. With that, so again, I'd like to welcome you all to the July 14th, 2020 Virtual Parks Commission meeting. This meeting is being live streamed on YouTube Live. It is also available to the public, so video streaming on YouTube Live. It's also available through an intercall number that was printed on your agenda for the public to call into. And it will be recorded for the permanent record. Just a couple of quick reminders. If you'd like to mute your mics when you're not talking, that'll help reduce background noise, and staff can help assist muting if we kind of notice that. So sometimes there's interference even from having your cell phone too close to the computer sometimes. So just remember, it's always that step to unmute when you wanted to talk. For those of you that is the first time having a group on a WebEx call, there is a feature in the upper corner called Grid View. That kind of gives you the Brady Bunch layout, if you'd like to say, and even Bryn said she knows what the Brady Bunch is. So the Grid View can cross all generations. As you know, sometimes on these calls, if you like to speak, sometimes to get the chair's attention, put your hand up. Another tip that we've wanted to express is if you find that there's any freezing or your internet is struggling to keep up, try just turning off your camera view, kind of your self camera view. That'll just kind of stop the video for a little while. It'll allow your internet to catch back up, and then you can turn that back on. As we just did for the roll call, going commissioner by commissioner, we will use that whenever we do have votes. So you'll have three more of those this evening. The first will be on the approval of the agenda. We have the minutes from our prior meeting, and then we'll do that as well at the end for adjournment. So expect us to kind of go through that same order listed on your agenda. We will rotate that for August, so not everyone has to be, you'll all get your turn going first, hopefully, but go with that. So with that, again, a welcome to the meeting, and then I'll turn it back to Chair Itis to proceed.
Good. I'll entertain a motion then for the approval of the meeting agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
So we had a motion by Good, and was it a second by Struther?
Eileen was.
Is Eileen. Okay. Motion by Good, second by McCauley. Commissioner Dahleen. Commissioner Doskich.
Aye.
Commissioner Good.
Aye.
Commissioner Miller.
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson.
Aye.
Commissioner Struther.
Aye.
Commissioner McCauley.
Aye.
Commissioner Itis.
Aye.
And for those watching one of our meetings, maybe for the first time, student Commissioner Osborne doesn't vote on some of those agenda items. So that's why she did not vote there. So with that, your meeting agenda for this evening is approved.
I'll entertain a motion then to approve the meeting minutes.
So move. Second.
All right. So we'll go through that then. Commissioner Darlene,
Aye.
Commissioner Doskich,
Aye.
Commissioner Good,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson, Commissioner Nelson,
Aye.
Commissioner Strother,
Aye.
Commissioner McCauley,
Aye.
and Commissioner Itis.
Aye.
So is that. So with that, Chair, would you like me to jump into the first agenda item?
Yeah, go to item A. Or I'm sorry, yeah. Please do.
Correct, thank you. So item A, we just wanted to kind of recap your June 16th virtual joint work session with the City Council. That was kind of the first time we did have any sort of virtual meeting since your last in-person meeting of March 10th. That was more of a kind of a dialogue with the City Council that normally is all about the work plan. But since the work plan had not, we hadn't had any updates since March, we wanted to kind of go through just all of kind of the occurrences that had happened since the last meeting through that time frame. So with that, we did put together a staff report and kind of wanted to take tonight to see if you had any other additional questions. I did feel like a little bit of an auctioneer at that June meeting, trying to cover a lot of ground very quickly within that. So
Harry,
I
I'm
wanted to
sorry.
kind of just do a brief summary. Is there a question?
But can people mute? I can't, there's a lot of background noise.
So just wanted to kind of touch on, we did cover 4 things that evening. The enterprise operations, the status of those, the changes to our recreation programming, an update on our parks and natural resource amenities, and then kind of our fiscal position. So just to quickly go through that, we kind of talked about the closure of those facilities, kind of the impacts to operations that we saw, a little bit of the strategy sessions that occurred through April, May, and as we kind of opened up a majority of those in June. As we indicated at the time, the golf course was the first enterprise allowed to reopen. That was early April under a park and play program. June really saw the most movement in our operations on the enterprise side with things like the Edinburgh track, fitness area and indoor pool, the Braemar Ice Arena reopening, additional amenities at Centennial Lakes came online. And then, again, the golf course continued operations. Since kind of that June 16th, a few additional items have changed for operations. And the biggest one is basically, as we'll talk about in a little bit, the changes to youth and adult athletics was given the green light into the end of June and early July. So that did see Braemar Ice Arena was able to switch from just drills and activities into more scrimmages, practices, and now gameplay. So that was allowed through another executive order that really came online in earnest right around the beginning of July for indoor centers. So with that, we did also talk a little bit about recreation programming. Since that meeting, we have started offering some reimagined programs for residents around some camps and activities, some lessons and things like that, outdoor fitness classes for residents that are registering now. We did indicate as well that the senior center is still closed for operations That's still considered a very high risk group for offerings to limit get-togethers. In addition, we had it in the report and also in our informational items tonight. Within the next week or so, Hennepin County is scheduled to begin a facility improvement project at the library, which includes the senior center. So that building will not be able to be occupied during that construction. So again, while we are closed due to the COVID-19 pandemic, it is actually a fortunate time to try to get that work done in that facility so we can reopen, hopefully in the November timeframe for that. As indicated a little bit ago, youth athletics has now been able to move towards gameplay. Not all associations are doing that. Some are still doing just contact drills, or not contact drills, but drills, clinics, etc., skill development, while others have started moving into gameplay. There was one association that did just call off their summer season, and they're going to reevaluate for their fall session as well. So with that as well, we did highlight that the sports dome, the decision we made was to keep that up for the summer. We didn't know at the time where youth sports were going to be. Our contracted labor force was unavailable to us, and we were able to find alternate field locations for our youth athletics. Now that may not be perfect in every sense of the world, but it was kind of the decision point that we had made at the time. Kind of ran the numbers, and where our fiscal position was, it was advantageous for us to not incur the cost of taking down the dome, and then in the fall putting that dome back up. So it's kind of that, make a decision, and we've kind of got to kind of go with it as we go through. One of the biggest pieces that we had to make a lot of decision on during the pandemic was that parks and natural resources areas, what to close, how to close them, how to sign, how to take things offline. We instituted eventually a park ambassador program, which was a challenge for the staff that did that, to be kind of out in the public trying to enforce a lot of those limits and executive orders that we had to go through. Once the stay-at-home order was lifted and more things came online, we did stop that program. So I don't know the exact date, but we're currently not in the Park Ambassador program at this point as well. A lot of the meeting, we did talk about the financial impact to our enterprise funds, just where they're at. Each one is in a little bit different position. However, the closure and lack of revenue from March through June and some of the modifications we have to made have been challenging as well. So we did kind of put together kind of a variance from 2019 to 2020 in the report. We also kind of wanted to take kind of 5 steps to how we kind of wanted to continue operating on that. Is to one, open where we know we weren't going to lose a lot of or have a lot of risk on incurring additional financial losses. Kind of review any new revenue capturing opportunities we could go through. Unfortunately, that includes the flip side of revenue is the expense side, and that's try to limit expenses. And I think we all know the kind of the capital position that we need to be in. That's been a focus of CIP investment, I know, for the commission for a while now, but limiting kind of capital investment to those that just protect the safety and well-being of our staff and patrons. Another solution we had is, fortunately, a number of the enterprise funds, through capturing their depreciation back into the operation, did have some existing cash fund balances to offset those operating losses for the interim. And then we'll be reprioritizing transfers from the Edina Liquor Store profits to mainly the golf course, the Art Center, and the Braemar Arena for 2020. Those are the ones that, through various reasons, didn't necessarily have a cash on hand position that we could weather that storm. So we'll be reprioritizing those a little bit as well. And then the last piece of that was Chair Itis kind of talked a little bit about the commission work plan, and I think that leads into the next item on your agenda, which is a discussion on refocusing on the work plan, a strategy around reprioritizing and kind of getting back into those work groups and how maybe staff can assist in that realm. So again, I kind of feel like an auctioneer when I go through this, but if there's any outstanding questions maybe that popped in your mind during the meeting or you've had in the interim piece, we'd be happy to try and answer those tonight or get you an answer in the near term.
Hey, Terry, I know this, Commissioner Miller here. I know this meeting that we had with the city council wasn't that long ago, but it's a lot's changed. Is there like 2 or 3 bullet points of things, especially with the enterprise locations that have changed just since that city council meeting?
Thank you, Commissioner Miller. I think the biggest change we've had is the ability to expand at Braemar Ice Arena. I think, you know, the movement from just using that on practice skill development, they had restrictions on what the Department of Health is calling pod size. You probably hear a lot about pod size. You know, it started with a group of 10, then you could have 2 10s. Now that's up to, I believe it's 25 per pod. What that allowed us to do is start moving into from just skill to game. And with game now began tournaments. So rather than just people trying to find ice time for skill development, we're now able to, last weekend and this coming weekend, host tournaments, which sells more ice, which equates to more revenue. So I think that's the biggest piece there. And then the other one was Edinburgh Park. While we kind of told you earlier, I think in March, that we were moving ahead with the Entrance Plaza construction project. It's really a good time for that because now we're just limited right now to the track and fitness area and the indoor pool and the Edina Swim Club. So I think that has changed use there as well as getting people back into the facility. And while it may not be a revenue generator like we would wish, it does service those members and that swim association that relies on our opportunities. So I think the golf course is doing extremely well. I think even above where our projections were as we were coming through the pandemic percentages. So each general manager worked on, our finance department created this very handy tool for us where they could go in, change percentages of where they felt their expenses and revenues were going to be, which would then translate and take 2019 actuals and project 2020 for us. Based on those kind of estimates we've ran, the golf course is actually doing slightly better than what we had expected there. So a huge benefit there. The range is doing very well. The tee sheet is very full. We're back to offering lessons again. So our professional staff is very active there. So I think that is also outperforming a little bit of our expectations. Probably not enough to say we should really go through the exercise in July here to determine what that fiscal position is. We'd like to maybe see are the restrictions going to expand more, or are we going to stick with it for a while to kind of do this exercise again? Because it does, it's quite a bit of work to do that, where I think right now our focus is on trying to ensure that those operations are really trying to perform for the customer in the day-to-day to ensure that we're kind of offering that experience. But I would say if you kind of looked at those 3 bullets, the expanded opportunity at the arena, getting some members and our associations back into Edinburgh, and then where the golf course is at are really kind of the 3 big highlights, I think, from where we were in June that have kind of taken off in the positive.
Has Centennial Lakes made a few changes also in the last 3 or 4 weeks? I thought I saw something about boats and maybe even the putting operation.
Correct. Yeah. I think that question came up during the meeting about the putting course, and I think that was opened just towards the end of that week. So the putting course has been open for about 3 full weeks now. That has been going well again. Added an attendant, doing the social distancing, disinfecting of the rental equipment, and kind of the all the steps around that. So very similar to what the golf course has been doing, which is kind of expanding that duration between groups of tee times, I guess you could say. Centennial is doing that as well. The good news at the golf course is that pace of play is doing very well, and they've actually shortened up that interval between tee times. We started out very conservative at, I think it was about 13 minutes between tee times, to make sure we didn't have multiple groups stacking up on the course. I believe that's down to about 10 minutes in between groups. So I don't know the exact number, but I think every minute we can add about 40 players to the day. So going from 13 to 10, we've added a lot more opportunity for play there as well. So the next step, we can talk about it during now, or the informational items, is we were successful in securing some of the Hennepin County grants. That's kind of through a Three Rivers pass-through. One of those is to expand the pedal boat rentals at Centennial Lake. So that's going to require a location move to distance people out a little bit more. Expanded the number of life jackets that we have. That was a huge limiter for us, is just the number of life jackets, because the guidance on disinfecting those is really a spray down and letting them dry for 72 hours. So without kind of this grant funding, now we're able to add more life jackets. We can rent more or until we run out, and then kind of provide that opportunity as well. Early on with that guidance, we're kind of like, well, we could rent 25 times, then we'd have to shut down for the day. Now we're hoping we can kind of expand that out to do that, and not exactly sure on the timing of when that'll come online, but we just kind of received notice that we were successful with that grant, so that'll be the next amenity that we offer at Centennial. Tom and Laura down there have also been working with some entertainment, not necessarily using the amphitheater because of gatherings, but they've started scheduling some more roving entertainment to just kind of go through the park to kind of add that Centennial experience as well.
Hey, Terry, question on life jackets. Can people use their own?
That's a good question. I think we would allow them to use their own as long as it's an approved device. Yeah.
Okay.
Sure, we'll make that a rule.
Is there a way that we can
I had a quick.
make that public so people know?
Yeah, we'll work with Tracy. I think we can get that news out is when we launch the program that we're going to start renting, we can indicate people that we would have them there, or they could bring their own. Some people may be more comfortable bringing their own just because of, the material disinfecting stance. So. Commissioner Doskich had his hand up.
Yeah, I just had a quick question, Terry. I just was wondering, with the increase in the usage of the enterprise operations, has there been any data on contact tracing where they've seen COVID cases come up relative to that increase as a likely exposure?
I think we've probably all read the Star Tribune article or looked at Edina's dashboard on the homepage. Part of the COVID management plan at either Edinburgh or the ice arena is that each group is required to have a COVID management plan. So part of that is tracking participants. So each group should know who's on the ice, what to do in the event of a positive test. So you are hearing, I think, whether it's through the article or anecdotal, that youth activities. That youth age group is a group that is having quite a few positive tests right now. It kind of changed the curve in Edina when that was added in. So each association then is responsible then for identifying a positive case, if there are any, and self-reporting that, and then taking those stances within. So if it's Association A and the 6 o'clock group had a positive case, their responsibility under their plan then would be to notify their association or anyone that came in contact with. Throughout the positive test, I'm not exactly sure how MDH is then recontacting or reconnecting with positive members to finalize the contact tracing. I think, as you know, the biggest challenge is the timing of being notified of a positive case to then transfer that back to a contact trace and informing others of where were they, at what time, when did symptoms start. So I think that is still, whether it's through our enterprises or everywhere else, still a challenge of the lag in time from someone confirming a positive test to tracing it back to say, I was at the arena and I skated at 6 o'clock. It was against this team. So I believe just that is still a challenge going on. But each group that does come into the arena or Edinburgh would have to have a COVID management plan that is available, just like the outdoor sports as well. I think, Rick, maybe your mic's off. If you have it.
Yeah. Janet, probably. Any other questions for the director, or you want to proceed to the next one? Still off?
Okay, good.
Good.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you for those that listened in. Again, it went very fast. We had a lot of ground to cover. I know that's not our traditional meeting, but we tried to give the best update we could in the time. So then that last item that we did discuss that evening was what we have on your next phase of the agenda for discussion, and that's the 2020 work plan. We did have that listed in your packet. I just wanted to make sure I looked at my notes. So again, March was, 4 months ago. To some it feels 4 weeks. To some it feels 4 years. That was the last time we kind of had an update. So I just wanted to confirm at that time, back to the minutes, you did do a little bit of adjustment on commissioner assignments for that work. So just to verify that we've got names in the right items to kind of move forward. The second was, I know you kind of wanted to have a discussion around strategizing and prioritizing around where we're at, being it's July, and getting kind of back on track and what you want to focus on. Then I think the last piece of this is if there's assistant staff can play for your work groups moving forward by just, at the minimum, setting up a WebEx like this for your group, or getting you reconnected, however that might be. We are very open to that as well to help facilitate that. So if there's anything that staff can provide, others, I'll turn it back to the chair, and you can kind of have that conversation around your work plan, and we'll definitely take notes and provide feedback as you might need.
Okay. I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think at the joint session with the council, they had asked us at that time, it was near the end of that meeting, but what we felt, of our initiatives, what were the most, and I think at least I know I commented something about the CIP process, certainly with what's going on this year and in the near future, as well as Initiative 3, when we had talked a little bit about getting back into the community. And a comment was made about with everything again, going on this year, how the adjustment's been made, how the reaction. But with that, we might have an instrument or a vehicle for us to re-engage the community. So I think that was it, what we discussed that evening with the council.
And Chair, I
I'd
just
open
wanted
it.
to,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think Councilmember Anderson was also interested in Initiative 7. Just kind of that study and report on the 15% that did
Yeah,
catch
right,
his eye a
right.
little bit. So
That's correct. Right. So I think we should open it. I know Greg, I think, had some thoughts or a desire that we should certainly revisit this in. But let's open the discussion to anybody, certainly.
I can give you, Rick, I can give you a brief update on item number 7.
Okay.
We had Matt and I connected with Perry and Tom middle of May, maybe it was, and just had a discussion through what item 7 might look like, specifically focused first on our land use towards parks and green space. I did look back at the most recent information we had over the last 2 comp plans. And again, what we did here was a 15% of Edina's land area to be used for parks and green space as our metric. I did double check just again the last measures that we had to confirm that we are right at that number today and have been for quite some time. We have about 12% of our land use in our park system and just under 3.5% in what we would call natural resource areas. We are at about 15.4%. So that was one starting point, but we then had a discussion around how do we go beyond that, right? I mean, that's a threshold that we've met, and we can continue to examine, and we can continue to challenge whether natural resource areas, which are floodplains, drainage areas, rights of way, et cetera, whether that is really a decent way to measure that we're at 15%, but that's what exists today. But we started to then look around, how do we talk about a park services area and think about how our parks are servicing our broader community, and especially as we think about different quadrants, and we think about the Southdale district and the expected growth there that might need a different sort of park system than what we've got as far as green space and other parts of Edina. So had some beginning discussions around that in May, and also began to dabble a bit in what other metrics would be meaningful from both an operation and a strategic perspective. So some more follow-up work to do on that, and I'll be looking at trying to get the work group together here in the next few weeks, certainly before our next park meeting to continue that discussion.
Just as a point of interest, how much of that 15% is Braemar Park, you think?
I know we have that number exactly somewhere, Rick. I don't have that off the top of my head. I don't know if Perry or Tom, either of you do in your memory bank, but we can certainly find that. And I'm trying to think, is that a 500-acre type number for Braemar?
Yeah, over 400, I know.
Yeah. So if if that's the case, then it would be about 5%.
Yeah, so it'd be 5% of the 15%.
No,
So
yeah,
yeah.
it would be 5% of the total Edina land.
Okay,
Because we've got Edina total land area is just over 10,000 acres.
okay. I was just looking at the goal of 15%.
Yep.
Okay, to parks and green space. So
And therefore it would be a third of it.
yeah. Probably should keep it making some money instead of selling it, right?
Absolutely.
Hey, Greg, is there was there a discussion on the call of a metric of of any available space. I think kind of off the top of everybody's head, you might say, well, there is no other space, but there probably is. So is there 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6% that would be available?
We haven't delved into that aspect of it yet, Mike. I guess that would take us down another tangent to look at the total land area, and is there a way, whether it's GIS or other type of geo mapping, we could actually say, start to circle, here's more land that's available. We haven't tried that yet, no.
I just asked because if there is no, I guess if there is no option for growth, then it puts a different spin on this initiative.
Right. Right. And you're right. We've always kind of had that assumption that said Edina is relatively well built out, but I don't think anyone's ever tried to look at, yeah, but what is that available green space that might be under private ownership or government ownership that's not included in our numbers yet? I think we started to go a different direction to say, if we've met that 15% threshold and we want to maintain it, what else would be meaningful for us that we ought to shift towards that help us set a standard for operational and strategic review and keep ourselves really pushing forward rather than just resting on, we're at 15%, great, what's next?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Greg, is there a difference between park and green space?
There is, and I guess it's really defined. The other aspect is defined as natural resources, and those are actually itemized in our comp plans, all the way down to the 0.15 type of acre around a particular drainage area, floodplains, et cetera. So I think realistically, Rick, we'd have to look at that too and say, is that usable for what we're intending to do from a park and recreation's perspective? And the answer to that is probably not. But it is, the way the measure has been captured before, it is included in that 15%.
Yeah. I think of the big piece, right east of the golf course. That's all wooded and poor piece of property. Adjoins, I think, hole 8 there. That big piece of property. Not very usable, probably.
Sorry, I got a little disconnected. I'm having some technical issues, but on that initiative 7, should we have it more clear in terms of what that 15% is? If you're saying that park and green space are not the same, should we call that out better?
Corin, the metric had always been the combination of the two. And what I did was dig down a little deeper to try to then say, well, how much of that is truly in our park system that we would think about managing and connecting with, and how much of it is in this other natural resource area. So it is called out differently. It would be sorry, I was just going to say it would be somewhat challenging based on maybe you'd gotten cut out on this, but when we say Edina is relatively built up as it is today, if we just shifted to that 12% that's truly parks today and said we want to make that 15%, we'd have to come up with another 350 or 400 acres that we could make basically almost the size of a Braemar Park. We could make parkland to hit that 15%. If that's what you were thinking of, Corin.
I was just trying to, and I'm sorry, my phone still thought I was literally like where you guys were in 6 minutes in. But I heard what you said in terms of it's already broken out into it. What I didn't hear is how that initiative should change, or if when you're digging into it, it should change to more realistic goal, or if we break it out park and that's what I was just trying to understand. I couldn't hear that part, so I am sorry that I.
Yeah, that's okay. I think our working position, and again, we've just had one meeting so far, but our working position was we've identified what makes up that 15%. We could then have a discussion around satisfied with that. We haven't done that yet. I was moving more in the direction of saying we've hit the 15% threshold based as it's measured today. We could change the measure if we'd like to, or change the way we measure it, or we could just move away from that to say what other measures should we be adding that really drive some operational efficiency or effectiveness and direction on our strategic goals. So yet to come is some more discussion in that area.
I think, Commissioner Good, if I could just add, I think it kind of evolved into that next level of conversation you're getting to is, so what does the number mean to a resident that lives in this portion of Edina or on this side of Edina? What does the actual parkland mean if you are, across from a road, you can't get to a park, or as you mentioned, there's development that's occurring, so density increases, which puts pressure on a park. So it's kind of evolved into the capture of the metric, and now it's the how do we apply it, or how do we make things or interpret changes for the future.
Yep.
How does it all work together?
Yeah, and if we built off of Rick's question around and how much of that is Braemar Park, right? And we thought about Edina and quadrants, and then began to say, of that 15% metric, how much of that is in the southwest quadrant, the northwest quadrant, the northeast, the southeast? That might be kind of telling as well. So that's what I've got at the moment on Initiative 7.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, thank you very much, Greg. Any other lead commissioners on any of the initiatives that would like to make a comment, certainly?
I can make a comment, which
Sure.
is going to be very brief. So I have initiative 3 and 4, and I know we've mentioned talking about that during the council mix-up meeting, whatever you're going to call that, in terms of really how important and this prioritization is. We before had said May, and obviously we can just amend that real quick because we are tardy on that one. I'm not sure, Perry, if you have a good sense of what the realistic expectation is on May. Oh, it is. Yay! It's my life. Oh, you can't make it up. Okay, so anyhow, I think we definitely need to amend May, and then in terms of regrouping, in terms of what that, I guess we can just do it on the phone meeting for that to kind of reiterate. We had kind of said the priorities before, but we really didn't get to dig into it any more deeply. So I haven't scheduled a second follow-up meeting. That I wanted to make sure we had this conversation first. But Perry, I'd love to get your feedback in terms of what, if they had set any timeline on that. I didn't hear a timeline set, but I know we had said May, and then for number 4 and number 3 being December. I just also want to make sure we set realistic goals since.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Nelson. I think if you look back at the minutes from March, you kind of gave a good summary of all the items that the work group had talked about in late February. So I think, kind of reconstituting that list and maybe getting back together to kind of say, okay, where does this fall in the scale? It was all the existing versus new, and all active versus passive. So really kind of working together a little bit of a matrix there. I think you've made a lot of progress that I think you can pick up very quickly on. I would say, I think from a staff perspective, it would be good to have that maybe in the next 2 months to share with council as they kind of start looking at the CIP in general. I believe, again, we're all a little, when you look at Tracy and Tom and I, to some of these processes, we're a little new. I believe they'll be looking for a CIP adoption probably in November. So I think having it, within the next 2 months for them to react to. I know there is a step we wanted to get feedback from 2 other commissions. And that was kind of taking the draft and giving it to them to say, okay, how does that fit in? I think it would be good timing if we could get that done and maybe send that back up to the council. I do think you made a lot of progress in February. It was a good meeting. So I think you could probably pick that up again and move fairly quickly with what you've already done.
And I'll just ask one more question. In terms of the way that we can get the topics, are they looking for just a list like we have, or are they wanting us to come up with some form of we talked to you for like a Vagonculator or some form of system that's like more of a weighing the priorities, not just ranking them, but how much safety is more important than cost and expense, for example?
Yeah, I would. Staff would probably recommend staying away from weighting them. I think you'd want to just do a priority of where you'd like to see. Again, kind of this is that piece of, if we have limited CIP funding, where do we want to invest it? And then as City Manager Neal kind of indicated, the hope is for that to grow in time with retired levies. That kind of opens up more opportunity or more choices along that priority scale.
So I will change on my form to say September, and then I will reschedule, or I will set up another follow-up meeting virtually with to further discuss. And I think that one kind of leads into the other one.
And I can just give I think I put it in the informational items, but a quick piece on numbers 5 and 6. We had mentioned earlier in the year that the council had adopted a resolution of support to pursue the local option sales tax at the state legislature. We did have a nice hearing with on the House side of things. However, due to the pandemic, we were never, I believe that also happened in March. We had a meeting or a hearing scheduled with the Senate. However, that was canceled. And then obviously the legislative session was trimmed way down during that. So there is no tax bill this year. They did not continue any of the local option sales tax hearings. I don't know what that will look like for the next legislative sessions. We have heard a little bit that they might change the process again, but as far as the 2020 local option sales proposal, that does not have any trajectory at all for the rest of this year. I know that wasn't the only thing you were pursuing, but that was one thing we did talk about.
Any other commissioners to speak on their initiative?
This is Julie. Can I just ask if there's an update on with the Human Rights Commission where they are at? And I apologize if there was one and I'm just not remembering it 4 months ago now. But last I remember that we were waiting on action from them.
That is correct. And like the Parks Commission, they are now resuming their meetings as well. So we should have an update from them once they kind of get back on track with their work plan, just like we are. So nothing new since then, but like the other commissions now are resuming meetings, virtual meetings.
And my understanding is we are waiting for them, sort of the ball's in their court. And so once we get an update from them and where we're at, we can plan some next steps.
That is my understanding as well, Commissioner Strother.
Any others? Okay. I think that's it, Director.
And I think I just reminded you, so that when you want to set those up, if you want to utilize us to coordinate a WebEx meeting, we can help you with that. And then I would just remind again to make sure that the commissioners that are assigned to those that had changed since the last meeting. So just make sure your group is up to date.
Hearing none, we can go to item 6, you think? Is that okay, Director?
Absolutely.
Okay. Any member comments, commissioner comments?
Commissioner Miller, sorry, I've got two comments. One is living across the street, and I know I've brought this up 100 times, but living across the street from that that Braemar wildflower area that hasn't been doing much the last couple of years. This year may be our turning point. It is actually looking very good. In fact, we were driving home the other day and my daughter said to me, "Hey, look, they planted a bunch of stuff there finally." I said, "They planted that 5 years ago. It's just finally all blooming." So it looks really, really good. So happy about that. And then the other comment was on Sunday, I stopped by Arden Park just to see how things were going there and was just so happy to see what that park looks like now. There were kids fishing. There were people just relaxing by the stream. There were people tubing down the creek. There was a bunch of kids on the playground. There were people walking on the paths. Everything except the ice rink was being utilized. You know, the only downside, which I know, Perry, you know about and you told us about, is just that landscaping that needs to get finished up. But as far as the functionality of that park, it was just so fantastic to see so many people utilizing it in all the aspects that were planned into that park. So kudos to the team and the 9 Mile Creek group for completing that. It looks great.
Just to add to my comments, I'm getting really good feedback from people on that. They absolutely love it. It's a lifesaver for them for this summer, you know, for the kids and everything. So just really great feedback from everyone.
And this is Julie. I'll say we've been using the park quite a bit, and we have really enjoyed the walking trails as well as the playground. And we may have gotten an update on this again, but are there going to be benches added to the park? That's the one thing it feels like it's missing.
Yeah, so my staff started installing benches. There's 10 locations currently. They're probably 7 of them have been installed already. We're looking at adding a couple around the playground area that were not on the original plan also, but there are more benches coming in currently.
Yeah, I think benches around the playground area for someone with both toddler and an infant, I think would be appreciated. So, but otherwise the park is amazing and getting tons of use.
Say, this is Greg. I just had one follow-up. Maybe it's a question. I don't know if anyone on staff can answer it at this point, but at an earlier meeting that we had, Tiffany had updated us on the new pickleball policy that we were posting at the Moody Courts this year. And I know we were a little delayed in getting pickleball play started again, but now that I expect it might be a rather active summer, I just wondered whether we'd had any feedback from users on how that's been going, if it's been followed, if it's made things any easier, because I know what Tiffany had said the last time she presented to us is we were receiving some complaints about ability to get on the courts and just feeling included, I guess, if you would. So a kind of a sense of inclusion on use of those courts. Just interested to know if we had any update this summer.
You know, Commissioner Good, I've not heard one way or the other. We can check with Tiffany on that, and we'll probably have her on in the August agenda. She was scheduled to give you a rink update in April that got canceled. So we'll have her back on the agenda, and then we can have her either follow up to the commissioners on status, and then we can also maybe have some feedback for you at the August meeting.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Any other comments? I have one. Most people know that my wife and I together play 6 times at the golf course a week. So I have some familiarity. And I just, I've talked to Perry a little bit about it. I think the young staff, the young youth that we have working at the golf course this year, are just doing an outstanding job. I had the opportunity to send an email to the 5 city council members, and many of them are new to the golf course experience and have just done a spectacular job cleaning and cleansing those carts and turning them around. It may seem to be an easy job, but it's so very important that safety is taken care of for everybody there. Golf course, of course, is in great shape. At this point, it appears to be a very, very successful enterprise year for them. So that's all I have to say.
Well, Rick, my 2 boys will be happy to hear that since they both work there.
Yeah, it was great. Just not just the people that work outside, but the staff inside. They get about 1,500 calls a day, and for somebody to pick up the phone and be so cordial and attentive, and it just the particular day I just felt the urge to write the city council and express. I think the whole community needs to be proud of the youth that work there, and they're just doing a great job under these circumstances, and it's nice to see. I mean, they're struggling too, being away from their friends and not being active and doing their sports and stuff. So, but not to go on, but the other night I was there and it was raining hard, and one of them came over and said, would you like to have a ride to your car? He wanted to take me down to my car so I wouldn't get wet. And it was just, these are young kids, high schoolers and younger, and it's a great, great showing of the type of kids that we have in our community. Hearing no others, then we can go to item 7, staff comments. Director.
Thank you, Chair. The commissioners just wanted to highlight again, we kind of have provided a list of informational items. Some of them may be repetitive that you've already known, but since it's kind of been a long leg, want to just have a list there of, again, staff member Swenson kind of gave an Arden Park project update, but again, still kind of the remaining work around the landscape elements for the park, those natural resource establishments. And then there are a number of punch list items that still remain on the park, kind of with some of the infrastructure. But the 2 kind of main city projects that were 100% ours have been completed, obviously the playground equipment and the park building as well. So so that is really interesting as a new staff member, kind of seeing Arden Park really take shape. Knowing what you went through to get that project approved, to see it come to fruition is pretty exciting. The other thing, I briefly mentioned it, but we were successful in getting some of the Hennepin County Save the Summer grants. We'll be kind of doing a Parks at Play, the water safety days. We're actually, I believe, Tracy, we're doing that with the Edina Fire Department, kind of doing that co-optively, interdepartmental. We'll be doing tennis kits, and then again, the expansion of the paddle boats at Centennial Lakes. A number of the reimagined summer programs, we did advertise. Most of those launched this week, so that is occurring. With the new guidance, we're also allowed to start reserving shelters. That's a kind of a big thing for our department. There's a lot of use that occurs there. However, that indoor use is still limited by guidance, so we're not able to have the larger groups that we would normally see out there. Again, youth and adult athletics have started going, and then the senior center and library project. Just wanted to make sure I reminded folks of that Hennepin County should be starting that project in a number of weeks. But with that, we also kind of had in the number of city council updates since your last meeting in there. Not a whole lot to go through, but we did probably the one that I'll draw your attention to is we did award the Edinburgh Park entrance project. That is starting or underway, I guess you could say. We are on that removal phase, which we've kind of joked is part removals and part archaeology. So we're finding all the infrastructure issues that weren't necessarily visible. So working through that. I know we talked about at the time the design element that would go out in front of Edinburgh. The contractor is going to have a delay on that. So we're kind of weighing our options about how do we go through and reapproach that kind of landmark area. We kind of showed you that tree feature that would go out in front on that plaza entry. We still want to do that, but we'll probably switch to maybe a different contractor firm and maybe go through some new design elements so we'll keep you posted if anything changes there. And then the last is kind of an interesting piece, working with the city's facility division, again for Edinburgh, but working with them, we'll be doing a full energy audit of Edinburgh. And we did sign a contract with the collaborative design group to help that. So kind of working in partnership with them for that facility. So those are kind of the big highlights of kind of our council updates.
Any questions for the director? Item 8, Director.
Yeah, just want to kind of give you the updated 2020 meetings and events, what's been canceled, what was postponed, and wanted to really draw your attention. August, we will again be virtual. However, we'll send out the invitations again like we did this time. That meeting is on a Monday, so that will be not your traditional Tuesday. That will be Monday, August 10th. That's due to the August 11th is the primary voting day, primary election voting day. So we will be meeting on Monday. That will be virtual. And then I guess we'll kind of take it from there, how meetings will occur in the future. But, so just wanted to draw your attention to that.
Okay, thank you. I think I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
And I will call roll then. Commissioner Darlene?
Aye.
Commissioner Doskich?
Aye.
Commissioner Good?
Aye.
Commissioner Miller?
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson? Commissioner Struther?
Aye.
Commissioner McCauley?
Aye.
And Commissioner Itis.
Aye.
Well, again, thank you for easing
Commissioner
into a
Willetts here,
virtual
too.
meeting this evening, helping us work out the bugs and all of your testing of equipment leading up to it. So thank you for your attendance this evening.
Harry,
Thank you.
did you hear Commissioner Willetts here?
Oh,
Pat's there
I
at
was
the
just going to let
bottom.
you know that.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, Commissioner Willett, welcome to the meeting. You can vote on the adjournment if you want.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, aye.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks.
Put you on the record then. I apologize. I didn't see you come into the room.
I came a little late. Sorry about that.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. See you.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Well, thank you all again
Thank you,
for
guys. Thank you,
meeting,
everybody.
and we'll talk with you all soon.
Yep. Bye.
you.
Are you still there?
I am.
Can you
Let me,
hang on just 1 second, please?
Because
Hang
we're
on
still
just-
recording.
Yeah, okay, so you're still recording. Let me know when you want me to stop recording.
I think we can stop. We're done.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Just wanted to double
Okay.
check. Thanks.
And then do you have to hang up the intercall?
Yep.